Do you build houses like these or these? Well, I'm here to tell you that's not the way to do it. Here in this row, I have 50 Minecraft building tips and tricks to help your base look significantly better than whatever that over there is. First up, we got this room. So yeah, you can see the distinguishing feature between these two. First build tip / trick, detailing and framing. It is like the most important part of an interior. Like, you see this, right? That indent really counts for something. This here, this really counts for something. Everything counts for something here. Especially, like, this part, it helps breathe life into this room, and it helps make it seem more detailed. The bookshelves are also a pet peeve of mine. Like, you look at them, right? The side texture shows the book. That makes no sense. So, what you do is take a trapdoor with a full texture, not like an oak trapdoor, but like a spruce or a dark oak trapdoor. You put it like that, it hides that, and makes it look like a complete bookshelf. This was kind of fixed in 1.20 with the chisel bookshelf, but yeah. Also, beehives acting as drawers under here are like a staple I've found. So, yeah, you use that. As you can see here, this room is pretty lifeless. Without the bookshelf thing, without the beehives, and without all the detailing. But this room, it has curves, a curved roof. It makes it feel more realistic. I forgot I don't have zoom in this. It makes it feel more realistic. Just because, like, most houses have some sort of curve or like some sort of framing. So this makes it feel more real and more lived in, really. It makes it feel more like a house. Same thing can be said with the varied carpet. It feels way more textured than this run-of-the-mill generic red carpet. It makes it feel like an actual rug with all of those, like, things in the wool and just general, like, unevenness. Because a carpet isn't a perfect flat thing. It's uneven, it's weird, and it feels cozy. Next up, we have, like, this blacksmith area, and there's a lot of things that you can see here. This is the comparison that I made. Let's talk about the floor. So, the floor, polished diorite, gray concrete. One great building tip is easy to look at, making things easy to look at. This isn't easy to look at. You look at this, and your eyes get directly drawn to the floor because it's harsh white and harsh black. But with this, they don't get drawn to the floor as much. Obviously, the floor is still distinguishable, but like, you can see everything in this build and then look at the floor. With this, you're only focusing on the floor. Another thing that makes it easier to look at is the general variation in the texturing. You have this, right? It seems flat, it seems bland, it seems boring. Variation in texturing is one of the single most important things to do as a builder, in my opinion. Bricks wouldn't be flat. They'd be, like, maybe cracked or, like, weird in some way, and this definitely helps that. The ceiling, too. If it's abandoned, then the ceiling would also be cracked instead of this flat stone thing. Another thing is the use of pipes. Now, this isn't really like a build tip, this is just a build hack. With levers and copper pipes, or chains, if you want to get creative, you can just, like, have it connect like this. Oh wait, I also forgot, you can do this with end rods too. But yeah, you can just have it connect like that, making a little, like, pipe thing. This really goes along with, like, sewer type builds and, I don't know, just abandoned warehouses or abandoned furnace rooms, I guess, like this one. As you can see, this build doesn't have any, and it really, really, like, lacks that general, like, lived-in realisticness that this one definitely does have. Another detail is the shelves. The shelves are interesting because they're like barrels. They're easy, they're accessible, they're storage. Same thing with the scaffolding. These actually look like they'd be used as shelves, but these specifically, they look like realistic tables that you would see in some sort of, like, garage or, once again, furnace room. Whereas, if you go over here, this looks bad, because you can see this, it's repeating, it's obvious that it's a repeating texture, And then this is just like the most generic table design in the history of existence. Combine with that with the generic like spruce slab thing, and yeah, it does not really, it definitely doesn't hit as much as this. Same thing with the background of like the spruce stair shelving. Doesn't look as realistic as the scaffolding shelving, in my opinion. One last thing. For a build, you want detailing that makes sense. Iron armor for a blacksmith type design, or like just a general industrial type design, makes sense. It's iron and it fits really well with the color scheme. Same thing with like these tripwire hooks. They could be used to hold something or grindstone. But if you had diamond armor, that doesn't make sense. Time and time again, I've seen people use diamond armor because they think it's like a flex or something. It just looks bad. I'm gonna be really honest with you, it just looks bad. Which is why using iron armor or any sort of armor in a specific context, like if I made a base consisting of like blackstone and gilded blackstone, right? And I needed armor, I would use golden armor because it accents well with this. Or I would also use netherite armor. But what I'm saying is, use armor, or not even specifically armor, just use the small little detailings that make sense within the theme of your build. That's my TED Talk, guys. Now, this is definitely one of my personal favorites to come out of this. There's a lot to talk about here, but let's start with the moss. So this gradient from moss to mossy cobblestone to mossy stone bricks to stone, I use it all the time to signify like just general, like, I don't know, erosion, I guess? Because you see this, right? Moss turns into mossy cobblestone, which is significantly more quote-unquote mossy than mossy stone bricks are. So it's a perfect transition between the three. It also really helps with like cave building, like I did here, because it helps like feel like the ground mixes in well with the rest of the build. Another thing that you see here that you wouldn't see here, this is the example that I drew for somebody that would try and want to build this. It's just flat stone. The ground doesn't really blend in well. It's just flat stone and it looks boring. But you can see here that because of the fact that I smoothed the cave, it looks significantly better. Now, I didn't just use slabs. I used stairs. I used walls. I used a whole bunch of things. You see, in building, oh, a slab. I need a slab. Oh, they're just on the ceiling. I'm dumb. But yeah, a perfect way to do this. Stairs are like the in-between. Walls can be vertical slabs if you try hard enough. So, like, yeah, it's the perfect in-between from slab to stair to wall. It gives it the more smoothing texture than rather like having just a generic staircase like that. It doesn't work well, but if you were to have like a stair in between that, let's say put that right there, put that there, and then put that there. See, it feels more rounded now. That's just a goofy little example. I really like smoothing though, so yeah, use this one. If you're gonna use any of these in the video, use the smoothing technique. And now we have more build hacks in a video that is not supposed to be about build hacks, just build tips in general. Railing rails as ropes. You see these ropes tying down like the iron ore in a crate. I use the rails as ropes technique all the time for like logs or something because it looks like it's being strapped down. It just really conveys the sense of like packaging, I guess. Alternatively, if you grab a ladder and put it here, you can have it completely stripped down and have no boundaries between it, which I also like using this one, but this one is also pretty cool. Drip leaf, like small drip leaf and sea pickles. Sea pickles can be used as like plant life just in general. I see them only used underwater and it really annoys me because they have such a good texture just to be on a standalone plant. Same thing with small drip leaves. Like if you just have these, I don't know, in a forest or something, because they can't go on grass, but they can go on moss. And because moss is similar to grass, you can just put it like that and then bang. You have just small drip leaves everywhere. And also, piston table. I've seen this design done a lot of times, but if you have an extended piston, it looks like a table, because the arm is like the legs. I don't know what this is called, but it's like the legs, and then the flat piston part is the table area. And it just helps make it feel alive. Whereas here, obviously over here I have the oak plank table, the decorated pots, and the not stripped down iron ore. And it doesn't really feel as alive as this, because it lacks like that lived-in thing, as I keep saying, and all of like just extra stuff that help with like, I don't know, the world building of your build, I guess. I don't know how to describe it. Either way, yeah. Just do this. Alright. Time for farms. You can see behind me, this is a practical farm. I'm not throwing any shade at this type of farm. It makes sense for just like your run-of-the-mill player that needs a farm and that needs it quickly. But this is so much better if you're trying to like build some sort of world and like you don't need it for actually farming, you just need it for like aesthetic reasons. First of all, we have the variation in the plants. I have seen way too many times somebody try and demonstrate like a farm in their world, or like just a general like area related to plant life, but they only use the same type of plant, like grass, wheat, etc. Vary it up. This makes it look like there's weeds growing in it. It makes it look like there's different stuff growing in it. It makes it feel more like a garden, I would say, than like an actual farm, but still, it really makes sense. Yeah, same thing with up here. It's just really good. The distribution of fences in this, like you have fences, fence gates, mud bricks, and for the roof, you have this. Makes it look so much better than this. This looks flat. This looks like just flat and generic. Like you have the spruce supports, but you have no roof. And you have like a lot of other things that should be there but aren't. It feels a lot more empty than this, which feels like more of like a greenhouse that's supported by actual like structure than just this. And of course, the leaves and outlining. It gives a border to it. This just feels like you plopped it down somewhere random. And the bordering makes it feel more like a bordered off garden, that people like get the context of the fact that it's a garden. Especially with the leaves, it just makes it feel a lot more alive, which is probably what you're trying to go for if you're building like something with a bunch of plant life, in my opinion. And also another thing, one last quick thing. I don't know why more people don't do this. Just cover up your water. It is so easy to do it. Waterlogged anything has the exact same effect as just normal water sitting around, and with it you can hide lighting, which is also a really important part of building, hidden lighting. You can just hide it down here, or if you're feeling a little bit eccentric, you could just put stuff on top of it. In my opinion, it's just a no-brainer. Just do it. It's easier, just do it. It costs like 2 slabs, maybe, that's it. Here we have a library. Now this has a lot of things. It's really busy. I'm going to start with that. It's much busier than this, which this, I'm going to preface, this is a good build. Like, if you built this, showed it to me, I'd applaud you. It's a good build. Just, obviously, I had to make it better. So first off, a clear thing that we have is a prime example of more gradienting. But that isn't what this thing is for. For that, we need to look down. The carpet. Oh boy, I love using this carpet design. It really helps. So, you have it, right? It's all gradiented. A gradient that I've been using a lot more recently, obviously I don't have like yellow wool as an example, but I'll show you. It's this. It's yellow terracotta to yellow concrete. It makes it like feel more like shiny, like as if it's like gold or something. And it helps outline the carpet, making it feel more, I don't know, because like carpets in real life, usually they have like some sort of outline or trimming. So I just did this to make it like more realistic. And also, yeah, on the inside too, it's also gradient. Going from concrete to wool to concrete powder, it's just meant to be. You can do this with most. I say most because there are a few exceptions that are kind of weird, like pink or light blue, but most of the colors you can do this type of gradient with, and it really helps. Also, these bookshelves, you see them, they're variated. You have a difference between the bookshelf and the chiseled bookshelf. This is something that I really like with 1.20, because you can just have really easy variation. Variation is key in a lot of these builds, and I really, really like when people do this type of stuff, because it shows that you put the attention to detail in your build. And also, like this ladder design, separate thing. This isn't supposed to be a build hack video, I promise. It's just better. Like, you have this ladder, it's good. Don't get me wrong, it's good. But this ladder just looks and feels more, I don't know, like, it feels more detailed, which is really good when you're trying to build something. Obviously, it isn't functional because, you know, you can't climb on hanging signs, but it's really, really nice to just have in a library. As seen in Green's, like, decked out area level thingo. He talked about it, the picture on screen. I don't know how to explain it. Also, another thing, small detail, blockheads. These things are vital. They are absolutely vital when you're building, which is why I have an entire hotbar saved of heads, just because they're vital to adding detail. Like you see here, there's a ton of them. They're like supposed to be crystals, and it helps like bring stuff in that isn't necessarily in vanilla Minecraft, but it could be. And yeah, with that, it is. One last thing before we move on to One last thing before we move on to the next build. If I were to ask you right now where the lighting is coming from in this room, where would you say? Pause the video for like a second and type your answer in the comments. Don't cheat. Alright. Yeah. There's a lot of hidden lighting. Like, as you can see here, the lighting isn't anywhere, it's apparent by torches. That's obvious. But here, you have lighting here, here. Yep, carpets. Hidden lighting in carpets is, like, an essential. I do it all the time, and most, like, people that just have a carpet also do it. Like, they hide lighting under it. It's just a really effective use of not having, like, any sort of weird lighting block, like a torch that feels out of place. Second thing, glowberries. They obviously have a light source attached to them. That's just how they work. Third thing, yep, candles. There's a subtle candle right over here that emits light. And the last one is under here. Under the shulker boxes, there's glowstone. And because shulker boxes are like an entity block, they're weird, light passes through them. So you can just have these as a block, like as flooring or as like support, and you can see that there's glowstone under it. And it's so subtle that you can barely see it. Like, sure, there's obviously like a small hint that there's something under, but still. Shulker box lighting is really effective. Here, we have a small little shop modeled after something in my Escapades series called Asobu. Go watch the Escapades for more context. But yeah, it's like a little mini-so replica, I guess. But yeah, as you can see, there's a lot of stuff here. Once again, we have blockheads as plushies. This really helps, like, make it feel lived, I guess. Like, it just helps it make... It makes more sense to have it like that instead of just like a chest, which is what I did here. There's obviously nothing in them, but they're supposed to be like the merchandise in them if you were to build this. One other thing, the clothing. The variated clothing makes it feel more like t-shirt, shorts, or pants and shoes. It makes it feel more like together and collected instead of just like armor sets. Adding the variation, going the extra mile to add like the variation and detailing in like leather armor, because leather armor is really cool in that it can just be any color you want. So you can just do this and it makes sense. Same thing with adding this on top of it. It makes it feel like it's supposed to be a stand-in for a player head, unlike these, which are obviously covered by the helmets, but these aren't. So having some sort of like block that looks like wood be like a head on the armor stand really, really helps when you're building. Also, another thing, we look up LED light designs. These are really cool, and it's because it combines Iron Trapdoor with ochre frog light. I forget what they're called, I'm sorry. But, yeah. It combines the two to make like an LED light that you'd see in some sort of like shop or something. Whereas over here we have redstone lamps, which is usually, from what I've seen, the standard when people are trying to like do the same thing. But don't do that. No, I keep screwing that up. Ochre frog lights are significantly more like smooth, and they feel more like LED lights. Also, if you were going for more of like an actual LED light and what it looks like, the top of a pearlescent frog light just looks like pure white light with like some purple, but it's really subtle, so most people can't tell. But yeah, if you're going for pure light, something like that really works too. One thing about the store in and of itself is the shelving. The shelving is much more efficient because it makes it feel like it's more popped out, I guess. Like if you have here, there's no shelving and it's just gray. It feels like there's something missing from this, and the shelving perfectly like juxtaposes what's missing in there. It perfectly like goes against like the gray background and just defines it a lot more. So like if you're trying to build a store, that's usually what you should do. Like have something that pops out so that people see your product. And that just goes for real life too. But yeah, one last thing before we go on to the next build. Subtle gradienting. Gradienting, once again, very crucial part of building. As I said in the last like area, the gray concrete powder to gray concrete, like just that general gradient, is effective in a lot of places, including the walls. If you have a lighter color that looks like it's coming from the ceiling to a darker color, it makes it feel like the light is shining down, I guess, and like, you know, like how physics work in real life, it gets dimmer down here. Next up, we have a room that feels like an acid trip. Yeah, so I might have gone a little bit overboard with this one, but you can see a lot of the same stuff. Like we have hidden lighting there, yada yada, but one thing that I do really want to talk about is the gradient again. Gradients don't have to be subtle. They don't necessarily have to be as subtle as this. They can be intense and overkill, like this one. But yeah, you can gradient most things to other things. Like here I gradiented light blue to pink, just as like, I tried to make this room replicate like an aurora borealis. And I think I did it pretty well. But yeah. You can see here that it transitions from blue to black to pink, all in one room. And you can do this if like you try hard enough, because obviously, like if you paired some of these blocks, like if you paired that, and we'll say that together, like if you paired all of these blocks together, they don't look like they have anything in common. But if you gradient it like this, then it does really work. One other thing is the color palette. With this, it's a pretty bland color palette. You have light blue concrete, you have black and magenta concrete. Bland, right? Well, and yellow and white wool, I guess. That's bland. But this is intense. And using an intense color palette, like using a lot of colors, really helps like make a base pop, I guess. Obviously, you're probably gonna have to set aside a bunch of like these blocks and colors to make sure that you have the right amount, because using all of this is gonna be really difficult. But it makes it like pop. It makes it more like defined, which in turn makes the base look cooler. Another thing that I would like to talk about is the snow. This, obviously, It'd probably be the standard replication of like snow or white thing. Even though there's snow blocks in the game, I've seen a lot of people use white wool to like make snow, which is not how you should do it. How you should do it is like this, which gives more layering. More layering. It gives it more definition, and it gives you more opportunity to like make it more realistic with the layering. Also, one other thing about this base, I'm sure you could probably see it, but they don't need to be functional. These like bases and builds don't need to be functional, although they can be. And that's where hidden functionality comes in. Because you have this. Sure, the functionality is there, but it's so defined that it goes against the base itself. Whereas here, it blends in near perfectly. Like if I were to show you a screenshot of this, could you see that there was beds and storage? I mean, you probably could, but like, you see here, right? There's beds, very subtle, and storage, which is the basic like quota that you need to meet in order for a base to be functional. So yeah, we're counting that. This base has a whole bunch of things that is cool with it. We have, first of all, the lecterns and trapdoors being used as railing. You see this, right? It makes it feel more defined, whereas you see this, it feels unsafe and weird. Like, fences just feel like they blend in too much, and also this feels like you could just fall off. With this, it makes it more realistic, because you have a top balcony, which usually has some sort of, like, pillar design that's more accentuated than just what fences are. And with trapdoors, you have railing on stairs. That's like a standard. I'm pretty sure it's an OSHA violation if you don't have one of those. But, yeah. It just makes it feel a lot more realistic and a lot more housey. Also, another thing, using exotic blocks. You may look at a smithing table, right, and see, oh, there's nothing special, it just does the netherite thing, or the armor trim thing. Untrue. Incorrect. It can be used for so many different things. Like, look at that bottom texture. It's beautiful. Look at that top texture. It's beautiful. Using weird, unconventional blocks like smithing tables as roofing and, like, flooring is just very, very good. It gives, like, a tile effect, too, which I really like. Another thing, the oven design. This oven design with, like, a, I don't know, like a stair or something, is like one of those, like, ovens with, like, a chimney. I don't know. You probably know what I'm talking about. It's like the oven with, like, the fan in it. It just makes it feel more realistic and just better in general. Whereas here, it feels weird. It feels, like, crammed and tight, and also this just feels like it's there. This also feels like it's just there, and it feels unrealistic. Which brings us to our next thing about this build. Making space where you can. It's obviously a really, really tiny place, but I've packed as much stuff as I possibly can into this very small base. Like, we have windows. Those are pretty standard, right? We have windows here. Standard, yeah? But using even subtle things like using a half slab instead of a full block can give it so much more breathability. Because, like, you see, you can actually, like, sit down and feasibly, like, actually, no, you can't, but you get my point. It looks like you could just feasibly do something here. Whereas here, it's so crammed that it doesn't feel like you could get in there, because you can't. You can barely move. Same thing with, like, the kitchen area. Like, it just makes it feel more cozy and homely instead of making it feel cramped. Which, there's a fine line between too big of an open space, just the right amount of cozy, and crammed. I don't exactly know how to describe it. But, yeah, this feels cramped. It doesn't feel good. But, yeah. All this space really, really doesn't exist if you think about it. Same thing with the top area. It feels like a loft. It feels like something that you could just, like, sit down and go into. It feels crammed, but it feels cozy crammed, because you don't need to do much up here. It's just called going to sleep, right? Whereas here, it feels bland and not cozy. So it just feels weird being up here. a lot of things can be done with a small amount of space. Don't restrict yourself. As a builder, restricting yourself to like a confined set of rules, like full blocks for that, stairs for that, like restricting yourself is a terrible idea. I've done it multiple times, and every single time I do it, I look back on that build like maybe a month or two later with a different idea, and I'm just like, ooh, I could have done that so much better. Just some advice. Alright. Is it just me, or do these build examples just keep getting more and more random and out of pocket? So here we have like an abandoned office building. Like a room. An abandoned something. There's like a lot of stuff to be said about this. So, for example, the glow lichen. Glow lichens look like cracks. They look like cracks in glass, and people like skip the tutorial, etc., etc. That's the only example that came to mind. Have been saying that since they came out. They look like cracks in glass, or just cracks in general. And yeah, it's really effective using them in like glass and stuff to show degradation and wear. Another thing that I'd like to point out about like the abandoned feel of this, if you look on the outside here, right, on the outside in, very, very subtle gradient that shows cracks, like mold or something, and water damage. It makes it feel like abandoned and grungy, instead of just having like a flat quartz. It just makes it feel better. Because over here, you have a flat quartz, and without the cobwebs or the cracked glass that is actually cracked, it wouldn't feel like degraded. Whereas with this, it visibly looks like there's some sort of damage to the walls or the wallpaper, and I think that really like tells a story. Same thing with the deep slate cracks. Like, if you look up at that roof, it just looks completely normal, but with this, it's apparent that, like, there's obviously damage in the roof, which is why it's cracking. You can visibly, like, see it, and being able to see it without, like, it being too obvious just helps with, like, the story. Also, one thing, quick thing, limit the use of cobwebs in abandoned, like, builds, because too many cobwebs looks bad and can take the eyes away from just like the general build. Use glow lichen instead as a healthy alternative. That's also another use for glow lichen. One thing that I just like to talk about this room in general, you see here, just the general design of the windows. Here we have cracked windows that are obviously cracked. Don't do this. This is a horrible idea. Never mind for the fact that it's supposed to look abandoned, just in general. Like, mobs can get through that, and it just is not a fun time. But, going back to this, the separation of the wall and the window really goes a long way. Same thing with these blinds. Like, banners representing blinds as like an outline like this is a really, really good decision to make when you're building, like, windows and such. Another thing is the couch. This is the standard couch, in my opinion. You can replace it with, like, another rough-looking block like red concrete powder. Or, if you're feeling, like, bold, just replacing it with, like, concrete in general. Sure, it makes it feel flat, but it does also have the same effect. Don't do this. This looks weird. This looks really, really weird, in my opinion. It makes it, like, feel like things are jutting out too much, and if you do this, then no, it still doesn't work that much. Oh. It still doesn't work that well. Doing this just makes it feel like a more realistic couch, in my opinion, and it really, once again, really helps making it feel realistic. That's kind of the goal with building. Make it feel lived in and make it feel realistic. Unless you're going for, like, some sort of fantasy theme, in which case, do quite literally whatever you want. Alright, for this segment, we're gonna need it at night. So I built, like, somebody's office, right? There are a lot of things that I can say about this, but first, let's start with the blinds. The blinds help it make sure that, like, light isn't coming through. Instead, you have this other example, which light is definitely coming through, and, like, you can see the outside, but if you want to have, like, an area, like a room that feels isolated, I guess, having the blinds over it really go a long way. Also, another thing, bed frame design, this looks realistic. Like, usually you have, like, a bigger, taller part, like a small part here, and, like, the tallest part at the head of the bed. It makes it feel a lot more realistic than just having two beds right next to each other. It just helps the feeling of, once again, realism. It just helps that feeling. Same thing with this gaming chair. Like, you have a gaming chair, the standard is, like, gray and red, usually. Unless you're like a kawaii gamer. Ooh, like... oh no. Unless you're one of those people that get like really creative with their gaming chairs, this is like usually the standard, I want to say. It's what I have. It's what I have in real life. But yeah, it looks more like a gaming chair than, say, just a stair, in my opinion, because it has like the armrests and like the back part. Also, the PC design, having it just like this looks bad. You can't even tell that this is supposed to be a PC. Obviously, this is not the standard size for a PC. It's a really, really big PC. But yeah, to add like a gradient, add like banners over top of it, and add like vents kind of like looking things. Just make it look like it's supposed to be a PC instead of just having it be a block, like a blob of something. And then one last thing that I would like to talk about is the ceiling tiles. You've probably seen it a lot of places. Like, you've seen it here, you've seen it there, nope, that's all the places you've seen it. But anyway, about that ceiling tile, it's like the foam tiles you see in like big warehouses or like office buildings. The foam tilings, yeah, perfectly replicate that. Use like lodestones and smooth stone, because these two blocks, the fact that they go well together also speaks volumes. But like, these two blocks really help like just that vibe of like ceiling tile, because they have a direct outline like ceiling tiles, so you can actually probably see it. Obviously, if you're not in creative mode, I'd very strongly suggest against using lodestone, because of like, you know, the one netherite ingot per lodestone thing. But yeah, but you see over here, cobblestone roof, ugly. Texture is messy, and it doesn't make sense in the context of this build. If you have just something smooth and like ceiling tiles, then it makes sense, because it's supposed to be like an office space, kind of. I don't really know. Like somebody's bedroom, I guess? Okay, I came up with these builds to demonstrate build hacks. I did not come up with these builds for any context. And yeah, that was all of the build hacks and tips and tricks that I wanted to display today. Thank you for sitting through basically a rant about how people suck at building when they're just doing like generic wooden boxes. And hopefully I have made an impact on you enough that you actually use some of these building tips, because I really like to see people like building well and like having cool stuff. I'm not discrediting like people that just do stuff like this, like just generic run-of-the-mill stuff, but like going that extra mile really helps just like make people appreciate your building more. I've really found that in like just my general journey as a builder, because I can tell you, I started out like this. I started out like this. I started out like this. I started out with like the most basic, boring, and ugly builds known to mankind. But like, I evolved to this. And you can too. So, hopefully this video resonated with you and you can build better now. Also, if you liked it and want to see more cool building stuff, tap that subscribe button, because I have a series called Ecstatics, Escapades, and Building, where I do it like all the time. So, yeah. Thank you for watching, and I will see you maybe in another video where I do a very similar concept to this, because apparently the build tips, tricks, and hacks genre is really, and I mean really, good for reviews. So, yeah. I might do this again. I'm not gonna lie. So yeah. See you later.